Well, hello everyone. This is Matt McFarland. I'm the head of operations here at the Professional Development Academy, and it's my pleasure to welcome each of you today. This is our Executive Insights on Leadership webinar series, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. For many of you who are regular participants in this monthly webinar series, you know that the Academy, we host these webinars every month, and every month we feature an executive who shares their insights, perspectives, and lessons learned from their leadership experiences. And so today, I'm very proud to introduce to you Ken Spangler. He is the CIO and head of IT at FedEx and has nearly 3 decades of leadership experience. His success has been recognized with several industry awards, including a 4-time recipient of FedEx prestigious 5-star award. Ken, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And Ken, as you know, we make these Executive Insights on Leadership webinar series available to all of our Academy participants and the alumni from the Academy, many of whom are FedEx leaders. You and your peers have enrolled quite a few of your FedEx leaders in our program since we launched in 2014, so we really appreciate that. I want to thank you for that, and thank you for contributing to the Academy back then and now, and continuing to have your people be a part of it. It's really been a great effort to make leaders better, and we're so glad that you have been a part of that effort. I do encourage anyone throughout this webinar, if you have any questions, use the chat feature. You can chat them in to me, Matt McFarland, or you can chat them to our host, Alicia Detlef. Either way, we'll get those, and we want to be monitoring that and make sure that we have those. So with that, I'm going to welcome Ken and hand it over to him. Ken, take it away.
Okay, Matt. Well, thank you and good morning. I appreciate the opportunity. As you said, the Academy and our team at FedEx have had a great partnership, and so I'm just glad to participate to help out in any way. I'll jump in real quick and clarify. My role in FedEx is Executive Vice President in IT, but it's the CIO role for the global entities of FedEx. So FedEx Express, everybody knows it as the airline, one of the world's largest airlines, and operates in over 220 countries around the world. And then our FedEx Logistics organization is also a global entity. So the group that I am just so lucky to run is a global organization and operates in every region around the world. So, in fact, we'll jump in, Matt. If you, I guess I'll just tell you when to advance the slides. If you can jump right into the next slide. So, I talked about the org. Just to kind of describe, and for everybody on the call, I will say this: the hardest part for me to talk about is myself. I love to talk about teams and the individual people in our teams and the accomplishments of teams. But Matt and team asked me to spend a few minutes to really focus on 2 things, and a little bit of my background and how I got to this point in my career. So I'll take hopefully no more than 5 minutes, and I'll kind of give you a little background and say how surprised I am to have worked in corporate world for so long, and what the great lessons learned and the great opportunities have been with it. But this is the org that I lead today. It's a large organization, as I said, around the world. We have 7,000 IT resources between all the regions of the world, running a very large operation. As I said, one of the largest airlines. We move lots of freight and packages all over the world, connect 99% of the world's GDP, and just the organizations that I'm lucky enough to be a part of is a very large part of the $70 billion FedEx Corporation. So, here's I guess the part that I set up how I got here. When I was a young person, I always believed, was 100% convinced that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I never, even when people get into high school and college and decide that they, start having jobs, whether they be part-time jobs or anything, I never really had a real job. I started a business with some friends. We made lots of good money. I had a buy-resell thing going on, and so the straight scoop is I graduated from college. The reason this picture is relevant is I graduated from college. Obviously, I wanted to be an educated person, so I went to college and enjoyed that. But when I graduated, I had a brand new ski boat and a new car. So I was thinking life is good. There's always ways to make money. When you're an entrepreneur, you have a freedom and you have all these things that are of interest to somebody like me. And so I love to water ski and barefoot, and I'm thinking, this is a great life. I'm going to just do one thing. When I finish my college education, I'm going to work in business world for a while just to make sure I'm more educated about how business really works. And that would lead me to really the next slide, which is the first lesson in leadership for me, personally, was when I thought corporate America wasn't going to be for me, and I went in and just tried to learn business. One of the things that hit me right away is, what fuels your energy and your passion, that's what you have to find in life. And what I found for me is it was the people side of business, and especially a large business. And there was two things that became true. When you work with great people who are part of great teams, and then you're lucky enough to get some incredibly challenging problems, and certainly in what we do in the transportation business and now as part of FedEx, we solve some amazing challenges and create opportunities all over the world. But that was what I found made my energy. So my first lesson in just career, but it had to do with kind of leadership lessons for me for the rest of my life is, any of your team members, when you find the things that fuel their energy and their passion, they are going to be successful. You can almost write it down. It's almost, that consistent. And I kind of jumped in and, started my career and said that, there's so many opportunities to learn. And there's, when you get great people working as a great team, it's an exponential multiplier. So suddenly, all of a sudden, the contributions that you can make as an individual suddenly become, an exponential multiplier of capabilities. And so, I was a software developer. That's the way I started my career. Was very lucky in the sense that I got to work on some amazing things that had to do with package sortation and massive data movement and some of the things we did, way back when we were way ahead of our time as far as automated package sortation and things like that. And, I just was lucky to get to do many good things. And eventually, when I moved into management, two different roles, I learned two things right away. Sometimes you have a great team, but it's just not structured right. And there was the challenge, again, of finding out how you organize a team to success was very powerful for me. So as a young person, I started to see that, the little things matter, the details matter, and that was a big part of it. And then, the second part of it is developing team members, working with people as a team, but also developing them individually to find their passion and their energy was definitely an exponential multiplier of success. So if you want to, Matt, just hit the next slide. Again, these are kind of the rapid fire sections. I'm just going to, I'm going to do a kind of a general overview, and then we're going to get into a question and answer session, and that's where hopefully we can spend quite a bit of our time. But there's a lot of things that are important, from strategy through execution. But one of the things right away is, in fact, Matt, if you jump one more slide ahead, that's right there. One of the things I learned right away, and I will take it as something that is a principle of leadership for me, is there are certain things that when you listen to teams, anywhere you go in the world, like an example is now, my role is obviously a global role. And one of the, I guess you develop certain experiences in certain senses. And one of the things that became obvious to me is anywhere I go in the world, when I hear people using words like we and us, I can bet that it's going to be a successful team. Now, the other side of that equation is when you hear a lot of they and them, or you hear, I would always say this, when I hear they and them, that's a proceed with caution area. When I hear I and my, you just have to assess and adjust. Sometimes it's just context. But so as I start into some of the kind of key leadership principles, I would say one of them is just the listening and understanding, but definitely a key to success, especially in groups that work together, teams that work together. And in a company like FedEx, where we're many large multi-billion-dollar operating companies and have to work across boundaries, words like we and us are definite indicators of success or not. And so, let me kind of back up and start to put kind of doing a rapid fire round there to quit talking about myself and talk about leadership instead. And, I would start with this. appreciating individual people, the individual contributions as a team, and then suddenly you start hearing a team that talks and uses phrases and words like we and us. That's when you begin to know that success is, nothing's certain in the world, but it's one of those things that you have a lot of confidence that success is a likelihood. And especially because, as a leader, you must, especially today, you must be flexible, okay? And definitely, supporting and flexible and all the quality attributes and personality traits we all know. But the other thing is you have to be confident that I've used another phrase for years, and it's just meant to be a little dramatic, but I always say when you're leading large groups, the highs are high and the lows are low, and there's no real in between. But as a leader, you have to stay there all the time. You have to be consistent. When the highs are high, you still have to be the same person. When the lows are low and there are issues or problems or, unexpected things, you have to be the same consistent person. And so it doesn't mean you're not passionate. It doesn't mean, people see you as, boring and consistent. It's not that at all. It just means that you have to, you have to regulate the highs and the lows, because one thing about leadership is you will see many highs and you will see many lows. And that has been true, I think in all levels of management, from being a frontline manager to obviously having a very, very large organization we have right now. And then, as I kind of move on this slide, the one thing I was trying to make a point of here is that this has always been true in business, but in a modern construct of business today, technology is such an imperative that one key to success is business and IT, business and technology partnering. Now, obviously, as I started with, that's always been true for decades, but in today's world, as I just said, it's more important than ever. But what does that mean? The question would be, when we say we have business and IT partnerships, a lot of people believe that means we're in the same meetings together, but it means a lot more than that. And that means that, again, it's the team construct, right? It's once again, go back to that I know I keep overusing this, we and us concept, but when you hear the business people and the IT people not even be able to see the lines of demarcation because they're working as a team and we only hear words like we and us, that's another key to success in business today. Thanks, Matt. And the other thing I would say is, and this will start to get into some of, the kind of the bigger concepts of leadership, but, certainly one of the things we all know as leaders, you have to empower teams. But that, to me, is like half of the equation. You have to empower teams, certainly, but you have to provide clear intent. And if you empower teams with clear intent, then the teams always do great things. And go back to earlier, the math equation of any individual, no matter how good they are, they might be 120%, of the average person, their productivity, their capabilities. But when you have a team of 10 people, even at just 100%, there's your 1,000%. And that's really what you see is when you get teams working together, they have a clear understanding and message, they do great things. I said something a couple of years ago by accident. It was really a little bit controversial, and it was somebody was asking me some questions in a little interview session and talking about leadership vision because of being at an executive vice president level. And I right off the cuff said, well, vision's overrated. And I didn't mean it, but I caught myself right away. And I said, I don't mean to say vision's not important, but what my point about saying was overrated is everybody has a vision. And what's important about a vision is, can you create clarity to that vision? Align a team to that vision. A team that's inspired and creative with that vision, then that's what's important. So just having, the question I was being asked was about having a vision. And I was just, sure I have a vision, but it's overrated. What I focus on is how can we align a team? How can we inspire a team who sees that intent? And then I know just enough in my experience that if you have those elements in place, then that's truly the case when you can say, I'll get out of the way and let the teams do great things. And again, I don't like talking about myself, but I will back up and say, one of the greatest parts of my career at FedEx is I have been lucky enough to work with some amazing teams in different roles. One of my unique things is that I have been the CIO for all the large entities of FedEx. FedEx Express today and logistics. For many years, more than 10 years, I led the FedEx Ground team. Some of the greatest, most creative, hardworking people I've ever worked with. And then I also was lucky enough to work with the FedEx Freight team, and ditto, I could say the same thing. Great people who just, when they were empowered and they understood where we were headed as a company, where we were headed with our technology, why our partnering was so important, why things like We and Us were so important, these teams just did great things. So not to get, overly long in this section, but I just wanted to say, this is where it all starts to come together. And, vision, it's important. So I won't say, it's not important, it's important. But let me repeat, aligning a team, common and clear understanding and intent, that's when you really can start to say, you can get out of the way and great things happen. Now this slide, this is meant to be just a kind of a summary, kind of lead into wrapping into Q&A, but the headline says a strong culture of shared values. And I'll say, you can use any of the great leadership examples, the Peter Drucker example of culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, clearly, and it's something at FedEx we focus on a lot. Clearly, we all know as leaders, culture is incredibly important. But what's your culture stand for? At FedEx on the left side, I would say, it's clearly a people-first culture. We have something called PSP, People, Service, Profit. There's a little emblem on the bottom here. And, when you have great people that are empowered, inspired, et cetera, we're a service business. Those people provide service to our customers that's unique, that's specialized. And then obviously that makes us be a profitable enterprise. And then we can reinvest, people, service, so it's meant to be a continuum, and that's what it shows. But there's no doubt about it. A continuum just continues to move, but everything about our culture starts with people. And you have to live that every day. You can't say it. A lot of organizations say people first, but they don't live it every day. That's a key part of it. The second part of our culture is important. It's something we call the Purple Promise, but it really is as simple. It's brilliant in its simplicity that I will make every FedEx experience outstanding. And a lot of people take that and think it's just to our external customers, which, by the way, is the most important thing we do. But it also means the experience is inside. To me, I live every day that every experience with our team members or anybody, you just have to work hard to make it outstanding. Obviously, in any business, quality is important, and we drive our own. We have our own, TQM, but we call it QDM, and quality-driven management program, and we live by it. In fact, I sit here and I have my FedEx badge on my belt, and I only have two things. I have my FedEx badge, and then I have a quality-driven management badge that basically talks about some of the principles of our quality-driven management program. So I literally carry it with me every day. The other one is diversity and inclusion. It's not just diversity. We focus on diversity and inclusion in our culture. And, I've been in business a long time now, over 30 years. This has absolutely always been important, but it's more important than ever today, especially when you think about workforces and teams that are challenged in, just employment. I mean, there is such a demand for talent, and there's such a limited supply of talent that in certain fields where there are, they're not as diverse, you basically, the math says you're not inclusive of everybody. So, we all must work hard to have true diversity and inclusion initiatives so that everybody can compete and that we have, obviously access to the greatest talent going forward. And then, as the rest of this all comes together, people focused and how we make every experience outstanding and how we drive quality and diversity and inclusion, we're all products of our education, our experience, and our exposure. Growth and learning is a key aspect to how we must develop going forward. None of us can sit still and say, okay, I now know what I know and I can lead forward every day, every year, we must get better. And then the right side of this is a little more, so the left side was meant to be focused on culture. The right side was just a few, I would call clear intent items to have great teams have great results. So if you refer back to some of the other slides, and these are just a lot of the cliches you hear in business. I wanted to put a little color to them. Work hard and work smart. A lot of people, and I put those two together because success is whenever you can put those two together. The most important thing is work smart. There's no doubt about it. By far, everybody knows it's easy. It's the most important thing, work smart. However, I've heard so many times, and I've seen so many times in my career that some people want to use work smart as a way to say, but don't work hard, or I can give much less effort because I work smarter than everybody else. True success, if you can work smart and work hard, that's a recipe for success. And then local and global. It's just another form of we and us that I talked about earlier. Whether it's your local team, whether it's an extended team, whether it's across company boundaries. Yesterday I happened to be in a meeting till after 6 last night with one of a really, really large customer of FedEx. And, we have to sometimes talk about the local opportunities and initiatives, but we have to think about globally, and any type of leader must be able to scale. You have to be scale local and what's important and tactical and right there. You have to be able to look at the big picture, no matter what the big picture is in your own individual enterprise. And then, one of the other things that I've again, these are just, these are my own, personal thoughts here, but, current and future. This is another one I've seen a lot more in the last few years that I really have, as maybe a little bit in a more of a coaching role, I've understood how impactful this can be. We're in a period of time, especially with technology being what it is today, and technology able to disrupt and transform industries, and we start to swing our focus to transformation and how we must transform. And spending a lot of time with other companies, just like the company I talked about last night, every company you run into, we are trying to totally transform ourselves. And that is really important. You will change or die, or as the old saying goes, if you don't like change, you'll really hate extinction, But any great leader, any leader today, transformation is going to be important, but you can't leave the current behind. And sometimes what happens is we swing the pendulum too far. We don't have a balanced review of this, and we let a lot of the current capabilities and sometimes it's just operational excellence things begin to fall down. And so, again, one of my principles of leadership is the only way you can transform is to perform. So, perform to transform means you must have operational excellence, you must run well, and then you have the opportunity to transform. Otherwise, you don't. And then last, this is just a saying I've used for years, but it's just a personal one, but, I call it the rule of based on what. And this is another thing that I think is one of the fallacies of executive leadership is sometimes people think you get to a certain level and the details don't matter. In business, the details always matter. And I'm not trying to say you have to be, down in the weeds and you have to be, just so in the weeds that you can't, see the big picture. That's not it at all. Everything's a balance, right? And but one of the mistakes I've seen too many people make is the higher they get in the organization, the less they pay attention to the details. And the details are the business you're in, the discipline of the field you're in. I happen to be in an information technology discipline. It doesn't mean because I'm an executive manager that I shouldn't be technical still. I'm not writing software anymore or anything, but it doesn't mean I still should be technical. And that's just, so the rule based on what is everything from that level of how you maintain your own capabilities to when you lead teams and you say, okay, I understand that, based on what? Why should we do that? And it's a decision-making tool. So empower, a couple of things I'm going to close with, empowering doesn't mean ignoring, and, as I said, work smart doesn't mean take the easy way out. And the other thing is we must not let urgency of today eliminate the urgency of the future. And if you notice, every one of those principles are just a balancing act. I think the most successful principle of leadership is having the right balance and always understanding how we must, sometimes it's both, and that's the kind of the way I'd close this section up. So hopefully that was, I tried to keep it, Matt asked me, he said, hey, how about 30 minutes? So we're at 25. I hopefully was quick enough talking about myself. I hated that part, but I wanted to just kind of generically set up some leadership thoughts for us to have some Q&A time.
Yeah, no, Ken, that was great. Thank you very much. I really liked a lot of what you went through there, and it really was great to hear those concepts being brought out. And one of the questions that I have, it actually is a type-in question here that someone asks is, when starting out as a new IT leader or in a new organization, what are some of the tips or keys of a global company? Sorry, I got jumped on. What are some of the tips or keys to inspiring teams and gaining buy-in?
Well, I think, a couple things I would say is one principle I've used is, it doesn't matter what level you are. I always say, I'm joining that team. They're not joining me. So it's really important to go in, and I use a 3-step methodology to go in and the way to get buy-in first is, and it doesn't mean you have to spend months or years doing this, but first I do education and immersion is step 1. Step 2 is always assess and analyze. So the first step is you get educated, you learn. In this role, when I took on this role, I've been at FedEx for decades, but I literally traveled the entire world, region by region, and re-educated. I didn't assume I know. I made sure I really understood. So I got educated and immersed. Phase 2 is then I assessed and analyzed. All these things I had seen, what made sense, what didn't, and you take a period of assess and analyze, and then the third phase to me is decide and act. And so I think the best answer I can give is the way you get buy-in is when you, again, are joining the team, it's we and us. You really are educated. You're not just coming in and acting like you know everything when you're really not certifying that you do, or verifying that you do. And then, once again, we and us, even when you have to make the decisions, decide and act phase, when you're doing it as a team and you're saying, the rule based on what? When we learned this in education immersion, we assessed this, we looked at all different options, and here's what we're going to decide. And based on what, here's why. I think that is the only, this might sound extreme, but in my opinion, that's the only real way to get buy-in.
No, thank you. That's great. And then another person typed in here, can you provide some tips on applying team building to dealing with a major crisis within your organization?
Well, I think, again, culture matters. And so every situation is different. And I think, I know the question said team building. I'm going to start with a couple things right up front. One of the things that I think is most important is being open and honest. If a situation is bad or we're in a crisis, don't just kind of shine it up or sugarcoat it. Every one of our team members are important to us. They deserve as direct and straight information as we can give it. And so to me, in any kind of situation, whether it's a hard project or crisis, no matter what it is, I always, start with the principle of it's all of us together and we have to speak the truth and let the truth set us free, right? But then on the team building aspects, I think that's a really open-ended one. There are many ways to do it. Literally, I'll give, one example, and one of the pictures that was on one of the slides here is, when I came into this role and we're traveling the world and we're, going hard. I was literally not sleeping much, traveling around the world, and every time and unfortunately I was going east, so I kept losing time zones. And the team was working really hard. We were all together when we had a weekend, and obviously we were even spending some time working on the weekends. But we had an opportunity to get actually some free tickets to do the Sydney Harbour Bridge climb in Sydney, Australia. And I don't know if the team knows this or not, but that recharged my batteries like nothing else because we got to just slow down, spend more time with the team, and get to know the team members. So I know this is a generic answer to this specific question. Team building to me is whatever you make it, but what's most important is really appreciating, understanding, and knowing the individuals you are working with and how those individuals become a team. So it's anything you can do. The example I just made wasn't that it was the hardest project or crisis. It was just I was personally worn out, had been going hard for weeks. The team was supporting me in an amazing way. And literally by spending, 3 or 4 hours climbing that amazing structure and seeing that, I was ready for more weeks of doing the same thing by that little bit of, because we had so much fun as a team, it recharged my batteries.
Oh yeah, thank you, Ken. And kind of a question I think that dovetails into kind of what you're talking about here. You've been talking about culture a lot and the importance of it. And one of the questions that I've got here is, how do you maintain that culture in such a large, globally diverse organization? How does the same culture that's fostered here, in North America work, in other locations around the world? And what are the steps you take to make sure that culture is taught the same way or delivered the same way across all the regions?
There's only one way to do it, and that is to be very dedicated to it. I mean, and I was going to use the word discipline. That's not it at all. I had to stop there because it's about being dedicated to it. So in our case, our culture of PSP, People Service Profit, we actually, in one of the core companies, we started and said, we need to revitalize it. So we came up with a term that said living PSP. And then what it became is, how do we, what does that, think of that term, how do we live it? It's living PSP, right? And so what we did is we created specific roles, and these were, assignments, they weren't dedicated positions. We created cultural facilitators. And then another part of these were called cultural ambassadors. And so, you have cultures will happen either by accident or they will happen on purpose, purposefully. And we're very purposeful about our culture. We put these roles into place. We facilitate sessions, including, we call them unfreezing sessions to revitalize our culture. And then after we did unfreezing, every year and a half or so, we did booster shots, and so it was just a chance, and I won't get into all the specifics of it, but it was just a chance for everybody to get together. Again, seeing everybody as the powerful individuals they are, and then powerful individuals together became a much powerful team, but we very specifically and purposely managed the culture with those roles, with certain principles and practices and certain tools in place. And to me, all of those words, I think the most important, if I had to say one word, is purposeful. Cultures, they'll either happen by accident or you're going to, drive them purposefully. And that's really what's been most valuable for us.
Oh, thank you, Ken. Another question that came in here is, does anything change in the leadership role in good times versus bad or challenging times? Boom economy versus recession, politically aligned government, expansion versus contraction, et cetera. What is the changes there from the leadership role?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in any company, anywhere, I believe strongly, leadership roles do change by internal and external factors, right? You just have to be, we're all a product of our environment, and we have to be sensitive, educated, aware of our environments, and we have to reflect that as leaders. And, the hardest part is in really hard times, going all the way back to, I'll refer to, the Great Recession, now that we're looking backwards 10 years on that, at that time, one of the things we did is a across-the-board 5% pay reduction. And the principle of it was hard, but it also brought one of the things forward that we're all a team, we're in this together. And so, I'll repeat a couple things. In the hardest of times, you have to communicate your best. And what I mean your best is not in promoting or selling. You just have to be your most honest and most direct and most sincere. And you have to be, we're all in this together. And in that example, one of the things we had to do is, nobody likes that. It doesn't matter what level, it doesn't matter, nobody likes that. But we're doing this because we know the team we have is so powerful. We want to weather the storm in this Great Recession so that we can come out more powerful, we don't want to, reduce staffing to a level that it handicaps us coming out later. And one of the ways we can do that is if we all contribute together, or in this case, sacrifice together. And it was a really interesting learning and an interesting time for me. Clearly, there was a lot of concern. There was a lot of people that, struggled initially with it. But, I would say this is true of any company. I'm not just going to say it was just FedEx. But watching the FedEx team members think as a team, and there was more positive comments that said, I'm glad we're doing this so that we don't have to have a bunch of people losing jobs and things like that. It was and this is the greatest part of cultures, right? It was the compassion and caring for others on display by the day, even though nobody wanted to take a pay cut. And it was I don't want to say a surprise, but it was a great learning in my career of the power of teams, and a really good team cares about the team members, in a very deep way. And so maybe it's a long answer to that question, but the truth of the matter is the hardest of times need the best leadership. The best leadership in the hardest of times is the most honest, straightforward, and just being really sincere and knowing that we're in this together as a team. To me, that's the key to success in the hardest of times.
Oh, thank you very much. That's great. Another question that just came in here is there's a lot of buzz these days on the subject of team building and promoting emotional intelligence growth among the team. How does emotional intelligence or building emotional intelligence fit in with the team building concept for you and at FedEx?
Well, it's incredibly important, especially in leadership roles as you go up. IQ and EQ both matter, and I think I'm careful with how I say this. I'm hesitating a little bit, but in people I've seen fail in leadership, there's differences. I mean, humans are all different, right? We're all different, and so there are many different reasons. But one of the things that is a common theme, I would say, is lack of emotional intelligence. And then when you create the awareness of it, there are so many people that understand, they embrace the fact that, I have to develop my emotional intelligence. I have to be more thoughtful. I have to be more even educated around, how the emotional intelligence and interaction should be. Those who embrace it, they instantly go on and thrive. Those who resist it and don't think it's important or think it's the soft and fluffy stuff, they generally fail. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's just in so many years of being in leadership and executive leadership, all levels of leadership, from frontline management to executive leadership, emotional intelligence is a differentiating factor. I will say that extreme. And it's not like it's something that you show up with and either you have it or you're not. You can develop it, but you have to, again, be committed. You have to have inputs and outputs, and if you don't take inputs really well and you don't develop that, it is one of the inhibitors of careers that I have seen.
Oh, thank you. That's a great answer for that question. And then we talked about communication a little bit and how important it is throughout the leadership and being able to make your teams work. And do you have any tips or best practices for the communicating on a global scale? Obviously, time zones are different. There are some cultural differences, some language barriers. How is that handled for you? What are your tips there?
Well, it's difficult. You have to have a process in place, and I think when you get to the scale, and obviously we're in so many countries around the world, and just my own team is literally in every region of the world. We have hundreds of team members, right? So it's very large, and it's another one of those things that I hate to say, repeat this, but it's one of those things you can't do ad hoc. You have to make sure you have roles in place that people do this for a living, that they're good at. And I'm not trying to say you need to have a communication staff of 50 people. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you have to be very specific about what it takes to communicate, especially across cultural boundaries, okay, and communication boundaries. So you have to have people that are educated and work with you on that. You can't be ad hoc about it. Sometimes we'll send out, ad hoc messages. That's not what I mean. But you have to be organized and planned about how you communicate. Because you can over-communicate just as well as you can under-communicate. And then you lose the effectiveness of your communication. So one example for us is And I had this in some of my old roles, and in the global role, it's so much more difficult. We're just getting better and better at it. It's not like we landed one day and we're perfect, but it's clearly looking at a full year and planning a year of how we communicate. And when we communicate in person, literally when we're there, we're in town halls, we're in front of people. When we communicate via video, when we communicate just via email, and any of the other manners today, I just participated in a leadership call from one of the other organizations in FedEx yesterday. That's a 15-minute stand-up, okay? But it's a great way to catch their leadership with only 15 minutes, but to get everybody aligned. Once a week they do it, and they hit certain themes. And so obviously yesterday I spoke to that group, and it was really a powerful way to communicate. And so anyways, I know this, sounds like a generic answer, but here's the specifics again is you have to be purposeful about it. I'm going to reuse the word, right? You can't be ad hoc and random. You have to think about it. It's like engineering results in systems or engineer results in communications, right? And I think the principles of how you plan it and how you execute it are incredibly important across cultural and communications boundaries. And that's what we've done. Now, literally, we've done town halls where we've had to have translators. And that's tough because you're saying something, you're waiting for the translator to say it, and then you're saying another thing. I find that, incredibly challenging, but it's still important to be in front of people. And it's worth it. We can't do that all the time, but we try to do that as much as we can as well.
Great. Thank you very much. I got a couple.
Matt, can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you 1 second?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to add this. This is kind of one of my own, pet things, but even in not just formally communicating, but interacting, I've used this for 20 years now. I've used this kind of rule for myself that I said, I can attend on audio conference. I can participate, really interact and participate on video conference, but I can really only influence at mass scale in person. And so even when I decide when to travel and when not to, I use some of those boundaries as kind of a guiding light for me.
No, that's great. That's great. I have a couple more questions here and see if anybody else pops one in, but I have a couple more here. One is, with so many competing priorities, and there's obviously many people who are vying for your time in different parts of the business. How do you prioritize a way that maximizes productivity, maintains your own sanity, and keeps you in a business and personal life type of balance?
Well, it's clearly one of the most difficult things about leadership, especially in any business, but especially thriving business. There will be more demands. The demand will always outstrip supply. It's one of the principles we know, especially in things like technology development today. And so I think you have to be relentless about, the way we work. And I always, we talk about modernization and we go forward, and we would talk about working modern technologies. We were on a modernization. In fact, in some of the teams I've managed, I always used to strengthen from our vocabulary IT modernization, because I said, we're not doing IT modernization only, we're doing business modernization. And to me, what that meant is, sure, we're doing technology modernization, but we're also doing, it's about modern technology and modern methodology. So the reason I would answer this question this way is the methodologies of how we work, how we prioritize. And today we all know, the principles of lean, whether you're in manufacturing or software development, the principles of lean agile are incredibly important. So for us, it's been about driving a journey, and now it's a journey that we're driving across global FedEx. It was a journey we started in specific groups, but now we're driving it at a global level across FedEx. But it's truly the lean agile journey. And, scaling it in an enterprise, say for Scaled Agile Framework, is just the framework we use in managing some of the demands and priorities at a portfolio level. But, I won't get into the specifics of SAFe or anything. What I would say is it's about ruthless prioritization. It's about, in our case, it's about taking an economic view of things. And we have partnered with some external, or one in particular company that really are world-class experts in transforming to being agile, and that has helped us. So the answer, final, a tough question, and I kind of, said there's no perfect answer to start, but it's about thriving and being modern in the way we work as much as anything. And in that, it's about lean agile. And in that, it's about ruthless prioritization that you take a financial view and, and decide ultimately we're in a business. And, there's a lot of things we have to do, quality, regulatory, all that stuff. But we have to have the constructs of when we decide to say no, because everybody can say yes, but only the greatest can say no. And so that's what we're driving modern methodologies and capabilities to be able to do.
Thank you for that. And then I have one more question here for you, and this is one that we often ask of our these executive insights on leadership, and is what keeps you up at night as the big leadership challenge? Now, or what do you see as the next big leadership challenge? Obviously, no one can see the future, but in your history and your time in leadership maybe gives you some insight there.
Well, I would say. First of all, as a leader, one of the things, I'm going to put a little opinion here, and then I'm going to answer your question. The one opinion is, as a leader, I think it's really important to have a balance so that not a lot of things keep you up at night. You know what I mean? And so I've tried to do that. And I heard something years ago, and this is a sports analogy, but Peyton Manning being interviewed one time, and they were asking him about a big loss and, how hard he takes it. And he said something that was really powerful. He said, when you give everything you have, and you prepared the best you could, you worked the hardest you could, you didn't just show up, you did everything that you gave everything you had. He said, then I take losses well and I can sleep well and all that stuff. And I thought to try it, completely that, but in leadership, I think it's about that. If you're giving everything you have and you're capitalizing on what you're here for, it's not about you as an individual, it's about the team, and you're really doing the best you can for the team, then there shouldn't be a lot that keeps you up at night. Now, that's the theory over top of it about sleeping at night. The answer to your question, though, what would concern me the most, and this is going to be really outside of, and it's certainly not going to be a political answer, but, the world is a challenging place, and when you're a global company, you see the way the world has interacted and worked together changing every day. And that not only creates business challenges for us, certainly, but it creates even solution challenges for us. The world's becoming more unique, not more common. You would think the connectedness explosion, the information explosion, the fact that in 1 second or a few seconds, we can hear anything from any part of the world would make us more common, and it's actually making us more unique. So as a business, that's one of the things that concerns me is the uniqueness. The divisiveness, and again, this isn't political or economic, it's just leadership. What the whole thing we've talked about today is, we and us, and teams and leaders leading with the principle of we and us. In sometimes some of the, issues that are going on in some of the leadership examples today, it's really important that the next generation, it's not about us. I'm at a stage in my career that I've had a great career and I've loved it, and hopefully I've contributed and it's been great. But the thing that I think about the most every day is every time I get to see a new hire class or a new group of leaders or a new group of our managers or directors, that's the thing I think about the most by a factor of 100. And I think about what are the opportunities they are going to have. So I really think the answer to your question is it's important for us to show the next generation of leaders that all the great things they will bring, growing up digital, being much more modern in many ways, also could be combined with the team concepts and the fact that when you listen and hear we and us, it'll be successful. And so that's the one thing, again, it doesn't keep me up at night, but it's the most important thing to me is any entity is only viable with workforce revitalization and the next generation being better than the generation before. And I think in every business, making sure the next generation is better than the prior generation is the most important thing by a factor of 100.
Ken, thank you so much. We really appreciate that, and appreciate you taking the time today to speak with us and be on this call. And thank you for your contribution that you gave all of our participants today, and also your commitment and continuing participation with the Professional Development Academy. We really greatly appreciate it. So on behalf of everyone here at the Professional Development Academy, We appreciate your executives' insights on leadership, and thank you so much for this time today.
Well, thanks, Matt. I enjoyed it, and thanks for all that you guys do and the partnership we've had. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you again. And well, everyone else, this is a wrap for this webinar and for the 2019 webinar series. We appreciate you joining these this year and being a part of it. And we've had a great opportunity to work and learn with these 12 distinguished leaders you see on the screen now, all of who provided great insights on leadership throughout the year. We want to wish all of you a wonderful holiday season as you wrap up your 2019 and plan for a great start in 2020. Be sure to reach out if we can help with anything. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.